Are we recording?
Yes.
So welcome to the September 6th Joint Finance Committee Community Resource Committee meeting held by remote participation. You should know that you are being audio and video recorded. And we will start with a roll call for Finance Committee.
She's muted.
Who?
Laura, I can't hear her.
Oh, huh. Let's see.
Laura, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear us, Laura?
We can't
Okay.
hear you.
Interesting. Give her a second.
Should I ask her to unmute?
Well, she doesn't look muted. There's no microphone on her.
And
So
she's
maybe-
the host.
Huh, interesting.
How did the host?
I wish we could sign.
Oh,
So we're all just waiting. For anyone who just joined us, we're just waiting, having a little technical difficulty, and then we'll get going.
yeah, because her mic is not on.
Let me check. I can check from my end too. Let's see. Laura.
Yours is on, Rachel.
Okay, what happens if I do that? Can you?
Jess, why don't you, Laura, why don't you make someone else host, or it'll throw it to someone if you leave and come back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alan said maybe try rebooting. Glad to see members of the public here. That's great.
Recording stopped.
We're just waiting for Laura to yes, and Alan is favoring Max. I don't know, are Max less likely to have issues? I don't know.
Hmm.
Okay, Alex, we need you to get out your ukulele while we wait.
All
right.
Come on, Alan.
Just like the pandemic again, all these technical, we've gotten so savvy since then, but there's still technical problems. Oh, it's too weird.
So
Gonna
who's
check
the
make sure-
host now?
I'm a
Jim,
You're the
co-host,
host? Okay.
but I'm not seeing, but
Jim
Laura's
is the
not
host.
trying.
the Counselor Nash is the
Oh.
host.
I am.
Oh, yes,
Yep.
that's right. Yes, yep.
Aren't all of us hosts? I think.
Well, we're
We're
co-hosts.
co-host, but
but-
Jim is now the
Oh,
host.
Jim is the host because Laura's not here.
I had no idea. Okay.
I know, Laura's
And
not
this is a
on.
great reminder how important our admin assistant is. All business stops without her.
Antonio leaves, tech starts to fall apart.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm rebooting. All right, Laura is rebooting.
So
So
I'm just gonna look. Right. So just a preview. We're gonna just briefly look at some approval of some minutes for finance, and then we're gonna go into 33 King Street. And do we want comments on 33 King? Why don't we take them? We can do public comment first, but we could also when we open the discussion of 33 King. So if you're here to discuss 33 King, does that sound right? Councilor Perry, is that how we did it last time, that the public weighed in on the item
I believe so.
and
yeah.
not, yeah.
I recommend giving Carolyn to give an overview, and then people
Oh,
can
okay.
comment
That
on
makes
it,
a lot of sense.
comment, and then counselors can interact with Carolyn, asking questions for clarification.
Great. Right, so we'll get an overview from the Director of Planning, and then we'll take comments from our public participants.
Right.
In theory, when the meeting and when the meeting starts.
I'm happy to, it's being, we could start recording again, and I'm happy to call the roll for you all. That's helpful, so we can get.
Oh,
All right. let me just-
okay, that would, because that's really, yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Okay,
Carol,
so
I
let's
will
start recording.
next be a-
Okay.
okay, you decided that finance is going first?
Who's recording?
Yes,
Hold on, let's
yes,
turn.
but we need, yeah.
Recording in
Jim,
progress.
you're the-
All right, there we go. I've got the record. Go ahead.
Excellent. Okay,
Roll
finance,
call for finance first, yes, with,
Counselor
you know who it
Mayor,
is. Here,
Counselor Labarge,
Here,
Counselor Moulton,
Here.
and Counselor Nash.
Here,
Okay,
okay,
good at this.
and
We've done it
now
before.
call
All
the
right, well,
roll for community resources.
yes.
Okay, community
Yes.
resources, Counselor Perry,
Here.
Counselor Elkins,
here,
Counselor Jarrett,
Here.
and Counselor Maori again.
here,
Still here.
I got
Okay,
bingo.
both chairs, you both have quorums.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
And I will turn this
So,
over to Commissioner Mayor.
Thank you. I'll just get, we're just going to approve these minutes. And I do see on the agenda, do you see this too, Chair Perry, that I think number 4 is probably out of order because it says adjourn community resources. Oh, no, that's right. You are going to adjourn after the 33 King. Okay, that's right. Excuse me. So let's look at our first agenda item for finance, which is the February 8th, 2023. Oh, actually, we both need to approve this one. The February 8th, 2023 Joint Finance Committee Community Resources Minutes. So I will entertain a motion for finance, and then Chair Perry can do the same for
right,
committee.
move to approve.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, so Mayor, we're going to do a roll call on a discussion, or we can do a roll call on approval of the February 8th minutes for
Okay.
finance.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes,
Counselor Moulton.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
And Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, those are approved unanimously.
All right. Well, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the Community Resources Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, hold on. So who made the motion for finance? Sorry, let's back up a second. Who made the motion for finance?
I
For
did.
minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Councilor
Okay,
Labarge.
Counselor Labarge, and who seconded?
Stan,
Councilor Moulton.
Okay, and this is community resources. And the motion was made by Counselor Elkins, yes?
Yes.
Motion Elkins, seconded by
Counselor Jarrett.
Counselor Jarrett. Thank you. Okay, we're ready for a roll call.
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Perry.
Yes.
Okay, that is also approved unanimously.
Nice to have you back on council, Mayor.
Thank you.
you probably would jump right to it.
So now we're at the item to the review of the request RFP for 33 King, referred to both of our committees, and I think we'll start with hearing from Director Mish, and then we'll open it up to counselors and the public. Welcome, Director Mish.
Thank you, Councilor Maori. Good to see everybody this evening. The 33 King Street draft bid that's in front of you was referred from council, and you all discussed a little bit of the text at that meeting and then referred it out for further detailed conversation. And at that time, there were questions about whether we should have incentives for attainable housing and some other potential, and there was a little bit of conversation about parking. And so the draft in front of you has some red lines that incorporate some of the conversation that it sounded like counselors were interested in seeing some adjustments in. And so I'm just going to scroll down. Some of the edits are really just perfunctory sort of logistics edits. So I won't go over those because we need to figure out the timeline for when this actually gets posted and how long it's going to be posted. So some of those edits are really about the timing and how long the bid is on the streets. And so, and there were a couple of just minor editorial edits. So just jumping right in, the one area that's been edited since you last saw it was under the scoring criteria, item C, which was about using union labor. And I don't know that we really didn't talk about this at the last meeting, but I had some more internal conversations with Director McCarthy from Central Services. He has a lot more experience doing bidding for big projects and project management with contractors and general contractors and union contractors. And so he and I sort of talked about what might make sense, just putting out a straight number of points if there's a pledge for hiring union labor. And that sort of simplifies things without trying to sort of predetermine how those balances might work out best for a general contractor. So the next one, yeah.
Sorry, could I just note, so this is not something that's usually put in an RFP. So I requested that we add this. So that's why this is sort of new ground that Carolyn was trying to figure out with Pat.
Thank you, Mayor.
A request. Carolyn, could you share your screen and then we can see which part of the document you're referring to as you're going through it?
Sure.
Thanks.
So can you see that item C, pledge to hire union labor for construction criterion? Okay. The next item is the mixed income housing criteria. So this is the one that was discussed a bit at the last meeting, and a question arose about why we weren't also encouraging what we're referring to in Northampton and other places refer to it as well as attainable housing, which is market rate housing that's not either deed restricted or in some way subsidized with public dollars. And since we have an existing structure in the zoning code for how we refer to this attainable housing, it was written into when we created an incentive for additional smaller units, which we refer to as half scale units. Those are 800 square feet or smaller. So I added that language into this scoring criteria so that there would be an either or to obtain those extra points. So either market rate housing or other commercial uses and affordable or attainable housing is defined at 800 square feet or smaller. So that was an adjustment to say, both of these scenarios are a plus for the city, and so we would show that in a scoring criteria. Any questions on that one? Okay. And let's see, there's a scoring criteria for providing parking. We didn't talk a lot about that, but I think those are the biggest changes since the last meeting, and the rest of it are just dates and thoughts about sort of how we structure that pre-bid or the bid issuance.
Carolyn, I just want a point of clarification, public parking for residents, potential residents.
Well, this is, the scoring criteria would be for the number of publicly available parking spaces at a fee structure that's comparable to our city system. And that is, would be separate from whatever the successful respondent is proposing as part of their own project to serve their own project needs.
Got it. Thank you.
Do you want me to stop screen share?
Yeah, if you're done with,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
And I guess we'll first check in with counselors about questions, and then we can hear from our members of the public. Councilor Labarge. I think, Councilor Labarge, I believe that you are muted.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, would you have an estimate on in Hampshire County of how short we are with an estimate of housing?
Well, what a report that was recently issued that's often referenced now was commissioned by UMass through the Donahue Institute to be completed to evaluate the housing shortages in Pioneer Valley. So that's within that report is broken down as a Hampshire County number. And I think by 2025, the number was around 2,500 or 3,000 units where we were at a deficit. So it's housing across the board. It's not, that's what that number is. And that comes out of that report.
Thank you for that.
I think I saw Council Jarrett.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So Carolyn, can you remind me how many parking spaces are currently provided? And by that are available for us right now?
Well, right now it's the Wild West, except for there were about 10 spaces at the front end along Merrick Lane that were under the Park Mobile system. And then, so I would say 10, approximately 10, maybe 11 in that location.
Okay, but otherwise people are just parking there, and there's it's
So
not
the back lot had about 80 spaces, maybe 81 or 82, but those were Commonwealth spaces, and they were, during the day they were restricted to passes for state employees. And then they were available in evening hours, but now the gates are gone. No one's, so that's the part that's just sort of open for anyone at this moment is would be about 80 spaces.
Okay, so it is a significant change in the number of spaces potentially. That I just wanted to have a sense of that. And then I just had a question about the mixed income housing criterion. When we spoke on the phone, we discussed the possibility that there would be a range for the top points. So if you had more than a 60-40 split, then that you would still get some points. Because sort of as it's written, it looks like if you did say a 70-30 split, you wouldn't get any points. Is that still, am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good point of discussion that certainly we could add it to be sort of a range. So projects that include 60 to 70, percent to 30, 40, that, it could be fluid that way. Or it could be, anywhere from that number, if it makes sense, you could have projects that includes, up to a split of 60, 40 or 70, 30 or something like that.
Mhm.
For sure.
Okay, great. Well, we'll discuss that in a bit then.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Thanks.
Okay, counselors. We can, if the counselors don't have any questions at this time, I'll open it. Oh, Councilor Labarge.
Thank you. Carolyn, on that point system, which I have concerns with that also. Is this the first time we're doing a point system like this?
No, it's typical to have, so in order to evaluate proposals that could be very different, you really need to create something that's objective and can fairly be scored, because people are going to have different ideas of what would work on a property. So it's pretty common to set up a scoring system to evaluate, to help. It's just a tool to help evaluate the benefits of a project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Moulton. Councilor, please unmute.
Thanks, Director Mish, for the changes you've made. I did have one additional question about the parking. I'm looking not at the scoring criteria, but again at the additional beneficial features that will be considered favorably. And I raised this point on the 17th. That lists parking publicly available for 3 days or more. And you and I have had a discussion about whether that could be increased to at least 5 days a week. And is that in that introductory section, has it been changed to 5 days?
Well, I haven't made any changes to that since we spoke yesterday. I think, and it is also an edit that would need to be made, because you want to make sure that the text matches the scoring. So we should look at making sure that those match up. And so if it makes sense to have it 5 days, which I think, is perfectly reasonable. Again, I sort of fall back to, we want to make sure that we're keeping as much flexibility for respondents as possible. But again, these are additional points that a respondent can gain by providing that. So.
Yes, right. I see that, and there's no mention of any days, the number of days in the scoring criteria.
Right.
It's open-ended. I
Yes.
would hope, again, I feel strongly that that additional parking on that side of the city should be available at least 5 days a week.
Yeah, we could certainly change that in the text so it matches.
Okay, counselors. Counselor Nash. Yes. Counselor, unmute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Carolyn, Sam Scopatone, he's in the meeting here. He may have a question. Related to this. It's kind of like a bigger idea that he's talking about, and I'd like to just kind of throw it out there, and then he'll probably have more to say. But so it has to do with the minimum bid of being $2.5 million. That the property itself is, I believe, the evaluation is, I'm off the top of my head, it's the building itself that has the most value, and the building's likely coming down and leaving the land at roughly, I'm thinking around $600,000. And so the question is, why are we arriving at that minimum bid of $2.5 million? And why is it seem disconnected from the actual value of what the asset is? And then the other piece being that with the minimum bid so high, that we may also be making a threshold that's too high for certain interesting projects. And so that's the big discussion I'm kind of throwing out there. Sam will probably have more refined questions or thoughts when he gets a chance to speak, but I think I framed it right, what Sam's been asking about, and just throwing it out there for you.
Good one.
Okay. Sure. So I think I mentioned in city council meeting, I'm not a commercial appraiser. I only do this on the side when asked. But however, we've looked at sales that have happened in recently. We've looked at, for example, the Gazette building came down, and that was, a high value project that seemed higher than what some others might consider. There are other properties where buildings have come down. I think in council meeting, I noted the fact that the lumberyard project was, back in 2017, the Valley CDC paid $1 million for that property, and that building had to come down, and that was, 6 years ago. And slightly smaller property, it's in a different location. The assessor has looked at this. The assessor feels comfortable with this number as well. So I guess I should have started with that point and reiterated that from what I said last, a council meeting, that, we rely, when we're trying to do this stuff, we rely on the principal assessor to help us hone in on a number, and he felt comfortable with this. I will also say, if it's possible, and we would test it, that if nobody responds because it's just out of this world, then we'll know that, and nobody responds, and then we'll rebid. But we feel like it's a good number, and that's why it's been put in the draft this way.
So again, this is based on the assessment by the principal assessor of the city, and those who may want to bid on this, it's not surprising that they may like the minimum bid to be lower than it is, but this is based on comparables and the assessment of the assessor.
So could I follow up on it? So we won't entertain any bids that are less than the minimum bid. Even though, let's say, I'm just throwing out an example. Somebody wants to put a college building there with, so we got a community college, we got a transit center or whatever, and we get a ton of housing, but the bid would be like $2 million. There would be no way for us, under the way this RFP is written, for us to entertain that, right?
Yep.
Right. We'd have to throw out the bids and rebid, or not. If nobody, right? If nobody comes in, then we would start over.
And and so somebody could come in and they're going to do market rate housing and that's it. And, you know, and they've bid $3 million and we don't have the option of that other dreamy proposal that would have been at 2 million.
Mhm. Good
Right.
one, Jim.
Okay. All right, so I
And so reminder that anything that we sell this for, we are splitting with the state. So just, I want everyone to remember that.
thank you, Mayor. So, okay, and I think that's largely what Sam's point is, that with this threshold that we may, I just wonder, I worry we might find ourselves in a bind if there's a really spectacular project at a lower cost. So that's all.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that could be the case. It's also important to keep that in mind when we're thinking about tagging on, you know, any kind of other sort of mandatory requirements. And again, sort of, we've been talking about incentives and bonus points, but we also don't want to bog down the, in a way that would restrict the total uses.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn.
Mhm.
All right, counselors. Okay, I'm going to go to the public. I just want to say you can raise your virtual hand, or it's small enough that you feel free to raise your physical hand, and I will call on you. I see that Tom Bassett and Sam Scopatoni have their hands up, and then I'll look again towards the public. So Tom, you had your hand up. Oh, could you state your city?
Yeah,
Your
thanks.
address of your
I've lived at 40 House Street for the past 40 years. I'm a retired mechanical engineer, and very active right now with climate advocacy through local energy advocates, but I'm not representing their opinions tonight with my comments. I wanted to say I think it's great that we've got this opportunity. And I know I'm coming in maybe a little bit later. There's a lot of work that you all have done in the background. That's great too. So bear with me if I ask something, or correct me if I ask something that's already been decided or discussed. I think it's really nice to use this ranking system that Carolyn and the mayor have talked about a bit. My question is, does the ranking and the weighting, because there's rankings and there's scoring and then there's a weighting. So there's two different things going on there. Does that system align with the city's climate goals and housing goals, affordable housing goals?
Mhm.
Because I look quickly, and it's a complex thing, I know, to get this right. But I looked at it quickly and the price is weighted to a 1.4. The number of stories is weighted to 1.2. And all the others are weighted only at 1.1. And when I say all the others, I'm not going to go through what's in the proposal, but one of those things is percentage of affordable housing. So my question is does the ranking, can you know, it's a new thing, it hasn't been used that many times, but I think since this is a new building, really want to take a close look at it. And there's a great opportunity for somebody, the city and some developer, to get it something really close to downtown. So I wouldn't be shy for the city council and the planner to, you know, really look at those ratings and weightings. So there's two different things. The next thing I wanted to mention was, have you considered making any other things mandatory other than, I think I got it correct, that they must use a ground source, electric ground source heating system or a heat pump? Were there any things considered in the stretch building codes? I know part of that building code was adopted, and now there's another part that has yet to be adopted by the city. I'd like to just ask if you can consider that. You know, let's go ahead and push the envelope and maybe require the builder to look at the stretch building codes as part of this. But I do really like the fact that you're thinking about the climate change effects and resiliency of electric ground heat pumps or electric heat pumps. That's really great. So are there any questions or comments about my comments? Is that the way this
Right,
works?
Director Mish would, thank you, Tom, thank you. Director Mish, do you want to answer them as they come out? Would that be maybe better? Yeah.
Yes, that would be
sounds-
good. And I probably should have taken more copious notes with the series of questions. So I might ask for a repeat
Sorry.
from Tom.
Well, I've piled a lot of questions in there, so sorry.
So to start with, we looked a lot about the housing issue, which I think is where you started, and sort of going back when this first was introduced over a year ago to council, when we thought we were going to be buying a building a year and a half ago. We started the outreach, we started conversations with council, and we have over 600 units of affordable, deed restricted, subsidized affordable housing within a half mile of the site already. We've got about 290 units within a quarter of a mile, and then we're bringing on 30 new units that have just been permitted. Now, this is all affordable housing, meaning it will be permanently restricted for people whose incomes are not, they're income eligible, and their incomes don't exceed 80% of the area median income. So there's a lot from that perspective. There are a number, many units within a quarter mile of the site. So we have looked at that, and the way that this is split and weighted is, as you noted, the weight is most heavily leaning towards the total cost, but across 10 years. So we're looking at tax revenues from different uses. And we felt that's important to support the economy of the city. So that's why that was given the most weight. Then we're looking at other scoring criteria that we've added in terms of the residential component. The reason why it's weighted more towards sort of the split is for more market rate than affordable would potentially, or commercial and affordable, is based on the zoning, and the zoning district only allows residential uses behind a street front commercial space. And so if you were going to split and have more of a commercial building up front, then you could potentially divide it into two and have all residential, multifamily, affordable, or attainable housing in the back. And that would be allowed by zoning. So there was a specific reason for that language in splitting it between commercial or market rate, so that affordable housing developers who tend to really focus more on are more suited, or feel more comfortable, maybe is the right word, can more easily develop a single use building instead of a mixed use building. And then in terms of energy, all applicants in the city, the stretch code is adopted across the city. It's not a pick and choose thing for applicants. So we're about to enter into a new code era, building code era, and stretch code. And so that will be applicable no matter who is building. So we don't need to put that into the scoring system. And I don't know, let me know if I missed any other questions that you had.
I think I just wanted to know whether there were any other mandatory criteria that you felt were that important to meet the city's climate goals or the housing goals. You mentioned 600 affordable units within a quarter mile, 290 within half a mile. I guess an earlier question asked, well, what's the demand or what's the need?
Yeah, well, we feel like we have a lot of affordable housing in the downtown, within the downtown area, but we also need market rate housing to make sure that we have that balance, and that we are providing, and it could be any use, I should say. So we're, should be open. It's not a housing and commercial
No,
or nothing else.
right.
So if it were to be housing, I think a market rate or attainable market rate housing is incredibly beneficial for the community, and it meets our sustainability goals in that we want both a mix of housing types, and we want housing that can support economic development in downtown and create sort of that that source of um, vibrancy where more people are walking and living and working in downtown, and then availing themselves of the services and the restaurants and the other opportunities downtown. So that is consistent with our goals as well.
Thank you. Great. Good luck on it. Everybody working on it. Thank you.
Excellent question. Okay, let's see. I see Sam. Sam, could you tell us your at your city or your street?
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my comments. My name is Sam Scopatone. I live at 15 Kingsley Avenue. So I'm a city resident, but I also work in the housing industry. And I wanted to comment. I'm also a former city planner, so I wanted to add my perspective as somebody who's in the industry. The company I work for responds to a lot of public RFPs for housing development, and mostly in Eastern Massachusetts because the property values there are higher. But I wanted to raise a couple of points about the valuation issue and the minimum bid of $2.5 million, because it's really much higher than anything else we're seeing in the Commonwealth. And I took a look at the assessor card from this year, and it values the land at around $650,000, which is quite a bit lower than the minimum bid. And so I have to wonder, is that minimum bid taking into account the value of the building, which is expected to be torn down? And I haven't gotten an answer to that question yet. But the other point I wanted to make was that, it's normal for the city to want to maximize, the short-term economic benefit and the acquisition price. But that doesn't necessarily have to involve a minimum bid at the value you think is appropriate. For example, we just saw an RFP come out of Worcester for a city-owned assemblage that's valued at $7 million, and there's no minimum bid. We're working on 2 public-private partnerships right now, one with the city of Newton, where they acquired it from the Commonwealth, and the minimum bid was $1 for affordable housing. We have a similar project in Winchester at the commuter rail station, and there was no minimum bid for that project either. So I guess what I want to suggest to you is that if you set a really high minimum bid, there's a danger that people won't respond to this RFP, and then we'll be back at square one again, and there could be, who knows, years of delay. And I mean, even though I would potentially be interested in developing this site, I'm also a resident, and I don't want to see the building continue to sit vacant and the property continue to be, an eyesore on the downtown. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that, you could continue to keep scoring proposals more highly if they offer a higher bid, but you don't necessarily need to set the minimum bid to such a level where you're essentially precluding people from responding because there's no way they could make a project work. And that's my concern. I also think that what a lot of cities realize with these public RFPs is that the market value of the property is not necessarily appropriate when you're looking for all of these extra things like a super sustainable project or a high percentage of affordable housing or a higher quality of design and building materials that is to a standard that we would want to see in the downtown. We don't want to see a building downtown in a key parcel like this that is using the bare minimum in terms of design quality. So and just reading through the RFP criteria, it did seem like there was a really strong emphasis on short-term benefit from the city to the city, like on a 10-year time horizon. And I would just suggest that this is such a key parcel in the downtown that we ought to be thinking longer term than that and thinking about the value that high quality design can bring to the downtown and the placemaking effect that has in drawing people in. So those are just some of my thoughts, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sam.
Okay, I see Zane has his hand up. Director Mish, did you want to, do you have anything you'd like to say now, or?
Yeah,
we
just
can go
that,
on to
there were some examples of other projects around the Commonwealth that were publicly bid. And, as the mayor noted, we do need to split proceeds with the Commonwealth. And certainly there are instances where affordable housing parcels are given away for $1 or sold for $1. The city has done that many times. And so this isn't one of those properties where we're trying to necessarily get affordable housing. So it absolutely makes sense in the case where you're really targeting that and you're putting in scoring criteria that's focused on that. So I just wanted to, clarify for the council that we have thought about those, and we would hope that, if we do have to rebid, we certainly would not sit on it. We'd probably turn it right around and, present something else. This Commonwealth has an incentive for selling the property in a certain amount of time. So if we then sell it to a developer within a certain amount of time, we'll get a greater percentage, maintaining that instead of a 50-50 split, those percentages sort of shift. And so that is an incentive for cities to sell properties for the purposes of sort of facilitating economic development as quickly as possible.
I see, Sam, did you have a follow-up question, or is your hand just up from before?
Yes, I just had a follow-up. It occurred to me, what happens in the scenario where you get one qualifying bid, and this has happened to us before. We were, the lone bidder in the town of Shrewsbury for a town center development. And we were selected for that project. A lot of the residents were upset by that, actually, because it seemed like there was no competition. And so I guess I'm wondering, what would happen in that scenario if you only got one qualifying bid and you didn't really have a competitive pool to choose from. And I guess that's kind of the point I'm making, is like we want to invite a diversity of ideas and thoughtful designs for this site. So thank you.
Director Mish, I'm going to go to Zane. Yeah, okay. Hi, welcome. Good evening, Zane.
Thank you.
Could you just state your address or your city?
Yeah, my name is Zane Lemelski. I live at 20 Hampton Avenue, which is Hampton Community Apartments. A 70-unit building, 5 stories. I've been here for 13 years. I'm I'm also a business owner. I have a mail order business, and I'm also a co-founder of Trains in the Valley. And I have a railroad consulting business called Knowledge Corridor Services, where I recruit recently retired senior rail executives and find them projects, mostly in the freight area, but also in passenger. I've been looking at this property since I became aware of it through Representative Kokot's office 6 years ago. And at that time, Governor Baker wanted to use this and a project in Salem as an example of a better process. So he took it away from DCAM, the state agency, and gave it to the cities. Salem, it happened as he imagined. In a year or two, they developed the property. Here, it took 6 years before it was even transferred to the city. I'm not sure why. I don't think it was the city's fault. By the way, I just want to congratulate Director Mish on, doing a really fine job with this and keeping it as flexible as possible. But like I said, I've been looking at this project a long time, and I see three major opportunities: housing, parking, and transit. And you've addressed housing and you've addressed parking to some extent, although Walker, the parking and consultants in 2015 recommended, their major recommendation was that the city should build a comparable parking garage to Gare, a second parking garage, same size, but in the north side of the city. But all I want to talk about today is transit. And that's what I'm dealing with mostly in the rest of my life. And it's a very opportune time right now to obtain help, meaning money, from the feds and the state. As a matter of fact, 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, the FTA released another round of grants for transit-oriented development, which this would qualify for, TOD. And what I'm suggesting is, this site is a tripod, but there's a leg missing, and that's transit. And mostly because it's adjacent to a major rail line, and the trains on that line the ridership has been growing, as evidenced by the fact that the state had some metrics for ridership in Valley Flyer, and it met those. And so they decided to institute, that train at a permanent basis. And I'm sure they're going to add more once we get the governance issue ironed out. But there's more than that. Actually, the Northampton platform, and it's not a station, it's a platform, and I've got some comments about that, draws regionally, especially from UMass. If you've ever been at the platform during and after a vacation, there's hundreds of students there, and there's not even enough room on the platform to accommodate them. And that's only going to expand. Also, either further afield, the state of Vermont is very serious about reconnecting the Vermonter train to Montreal. And it's all been figured out on this side of the border. They're still dragging their feet in Montreal and Quebec over money, of course. But a lot of people feel that would be really an amazing game changer for the valleys and Northampton in both directions. We're doing this work. I wasn't trained in this. I was trained as an architect, but doing this work on rail, my two mentors were John Olver and Tim Brennan. And Tim Brennan used to say, we have to have projects shovel ready. And that's why the Knowledge Corridor got money, and it was renovated. It's also called the Con River line that runs through here. You know, it was such in bad shape that they moved it over to Amherst, and then that was in bad shape. So Brennan had the vision and foresight to think ahead, and that's been, you know, his legacy. And the same with John Olver regarding, and of course he was an advocate for rail nationwide, and the Olver Transit Center in Greenfield has been very beneficial, and so and that's an indoor station, and of course so is the Union Station in Springfield, and that advocate is Representative Neal. So what I'm suggesting is that what should be included in this site is a multimodal transit station. And when I say multimodal, I'm talking about rail primarily, but also bus and bicycle, because the bike path goes right through there. And I'm also suggesting that there'll be funds to create something like this on the federal level. Can I just add a note in terms of splitting the money between the state and the city? The state has the right to deduct all their expenses they've incurred maintaining that building over the last 6 years. So that's going to be quite a deduction.
Well, thank you, Zane.
Thank you.
And thank you for all you're doing for the Valley. That sounds really, I want to see if Director Mish had any follow-up questions, comments, responses to what you were saying. I'm curious about the deal with the state now as well.
I know.
You know, certainly, again, this is meant to be as flexible as possible. So if an applicant comes forward and identifies a range of mix of uses, and it's, you know, it includes a platform, and that's a heavy lift. We'll say that in just conversations with PVTA, coming off the Route 9 corridor to come in and around the corner adds time to the loop, and you know, I believe the conversations that we've had with them, they're not interested in sort of taking a side path off of their main route. So I don't know how viable it would be to include all of those elements, but you know, again, we'll see what applicants or proponents and respondents submit.
Say a follow-up question?
Yes, no,
Yeah,
just a comment. So regarding bus and PVTA, you know, I was looking at turning into Merrick Alley and accessing the site that way, but there are other ways to access the site. As a matter of fact, there's an existing stop in front of the old Hampshire courthouse, which would be much closer for students than having to walk from there to the current platform.
Well, thank you, Zane. It's a lot to think about. Yeah, do we want to, I don't see any other members of the public. Do we want to continue? Counselors have any follow-up questions or comments based on what our residents have brought up? See, Counselor Elkins.
Hi. I have a question for Carolyn, or if and I suspect you know, Carolyn. How does the minimum bid value compare to other sort of comparable properties? And I know we talked some about comp, so I apologize if I missed the details of that. But do you have any specific examples within Northampton of sort of similar sites and what they sold for, and specifically tear down properties?
Yeah, I mean, there are some recent ones, and then there's a sale that is I know is in the works coming, that will also involve a tear down. So the Gazette building was a recently public project or publicly publicized, I should say, sale that went to that's about 3.6, that went about just over $1 million an acre, and that building of course has just been torn down. And then the other property that for which we don't have a comparable yet, but just sort of looking at other values and where the market is going. We hope there'll be a project soon at 79 King Street that involves a tear down, clearly a smaller building, but that will be coming forward at some point. And then the old Honda property, which is farther out. So again, it's sort of evaluating these things are a little bit complex because you also have to look at the location and what could be allowed and what the height, what the maximum build out areas are. So those properties are both, you know, maybe a little bit over 1 million an acre for sale. This property is about an acre and a half. And so it is, when you compare that, it's, you know, this is higher than it would be closer to maybe 1.75, just under 2 million per acre. But the location is very different. It's right in the center of everything, and it's a prime piece of real estate. You know, 17,000 cars a day or something like that, anywhere 15 to 17,000 cars per day on King Street. So those are the things that the assessor looked at.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes, thank you. Carolyn, now that you're mentioning, you know, the Gazette building, and I have a question about the St. Mary's Church. That's up for sale, correct?
Yes.
Do
but it hasn't sold yet. So I don't have any information about what the negotiation is on that property.
do you know how much it's going for?
It's my understanding the church doesn't put a price on their properties. They negotiate that, and I don't know what the terms are for St. Mary's.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Director, I had a question, which was the purpose of a minimum bid is to focus the RFPs. So I mean, you have the discretion to decide yay or nay on a project. You're not beholden to just because a project ticks all the boxes in some way that you're not beholden to you know to accept it. So what I guess the purpose of the minimum bid is to focus the RFPs, so you're not getting.
I mean, you're setting, you know, a floor, right? So
yeah.
So if we didn't have a minimum bid, as was suggested, then somebody could come in and just say, I'll buy it for $1, but here's my value over 10 years. And sure, you could say, oh, well, this other project is $10. And then over 10 years, it's going to be $10 more to the city, you know. But we know this property has a high value. So we don't want to, I mean, you know, the real estate market is very strong in Northampton, and we think that it's appropriate to set a minimum bid to say, this is, you know, we want to acknowledge the fact that the real estate market is strong and that we don't want to shortchange ourselves. We do want a long-term, sort of a longer-term view, which is why the 10 years is there. I mean, you could pick any number, you could pick 15 or 20 years, but we think 10 years is a good window in which to evaluate, you know, return or revenue, I guess I should say, for that property.
Thank you. Councilor Nash. Councilor Moss.
Yeah, following up on that, and this is probably more a question for the mayor. but Carolyn, you probably know as well. So we sell the property. Where does the money go? What are the ideas of, let's say we get all of, we get $1.2 million. Where does it go?
So we get 1.2 after we split the proceeds with the Commonwealth.
Yes.
So, that is again, the mayor's the one in charge of the budget. So no, I don't have the answer to that. It's, but it certainly, it's important to keep that in mind in terms of, the city has a lot of expenses that are current, and as well as we look forward to what we're going to have to address in the changing climate and infrastructure impacts and emergency impacts. And so that money really isn't that much when you think about all the things that that we need to address in the community, as well as economic development and just generally supporting businesses in the community.
So again, this is going to be one-time money, right? So it won't be recurring revenue that we can use, we can plug into the budget to use continually. But there are certainly some projects that we are looking for funding for. For example, at the high school, so that redesign that we're doing there for safety, we've funded, initially we funded it with some ARPA money, but there will be significant additional costs for that redesign. We also are looking at what Picture Main Street as we start to develop the plans around mitigation for the construction period. We would like to have some pot of money to work on ways that the community can work together to support our businesses and support downtown during that time. So that's another thing that I'm interested in having some funds for. So again, these are one-time funds, but we certainly have lots of infrastructure and other projects that we need one-time funds for.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Moulton.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also following up on Councilor Maori's prior point about the city retains the right to not just reject any bid, but to reject any or all of the bids. And we've heard from somebody who is on the other side professionally, Sam, tonight, and I'd like to hear a better articulation of why not remove the minimum bid, see what we get, and that would allow the widest possible response to what Carolyn, Director Mish said. We want to be as flexible as possible. Let's be as flexible as possible with see what we get, and if we're not satisfied, then we can, go out to bid again. But I guess I'm having a hard time sort of squaring the flexibility with the need for a minimum bid now.
Okay, Carolyn, do you want to answer before I go to Councilor Elkins?
Well, I would just say I don't think it's appropriate to not have a minimum bid. So at that point, then I think, it's a conversation of what that minimum bid would be. We're going to have to justify to the Commonwealth why we're not paying them any money for this very valuable property. And I don't know that we have an argument to give them as to why we have $0 or $5 or whatever that is. We also have expenses that are already accumulating at this property that we will deduct from any of the calculation of proceeds. So, we want to make sure that we're made whole on those expenses, but also we would need to justify how a high value property is not giving the Commonwealth any return or not much return.
Council Elkins?
Yeah, I have to say, I can't imagine a scenario where we would not put a minimum bid and a minimum bid that very as close as we can accurate, as close as we can predict what the market will bear. I think we owe that to the taxpayers to maximize. This is kind of a once in a generation kind of development opportunity for one of the most important sectors in our city. And I mean, nobody would, and the idea of not having a minimum bid seems appropriate when we have less flexibility, when what we want is public housing or affordable housing. When what we want is something very specific, well, then we have to make some concessions to the market. But we can do a lot of things with this property as can developers. So I agree with Carolyn. I'm not troubled by the minimum bid as it's being suggested, and certainly not the idea of a minimum bid. And from what I've heard, it seems appropriate for the market. And I also think that it sounds to me like the process that it would take to retool, if we find that we don't get a good response to that, it's not going to get bogged down. We will be able to do this and turn it around quickly and retool if that's what we find we need to do.
So Jarrett.
Thank you. Yes, to me, this seems like a balance between what we're looking at is considering a balance between the city's fiscal needs and the community interests that we're trying to promote. And, we want to get the maximum for both. And do we think that the community interests are well represented in this RFP? I think by and large they are. But I think that's sort of the balance of what we're talking about. And Zane mentioned state deductions, and of course Carolyn, you also mentioned our expenses. Do we have an estimate on this? Do we have a sense of, if it sells for $2.5 million, and then what is going to be deducted from that, and what will we actually get?
So the deed that we have from the Commonwealth, the deductions are really sort of more our expenses that we are going to put into the property. And the proceeds will be determined after that. Some of those expenses relate to just maintaining the property, making sure it's secure, buying the right locks and things like that. Other expenses are really related to the environmental site assessments that we've completed, but then we want to follow up on to facilitate. We actually have some regulated reporting that has to be done based on the site analysis. It's already been done. So, it's going to be, let's just say $200,000 that we might expend just on the environmental piece. It could be more, it could be a little bit less. So those are some of the things that we would want to make sure that we have return on. Plus, we'd want to make sure that we have an economic benefit to the community on the sale of this property. As the mayor mentioned, and Councilor Elkins also, that we have to be fiscally responsible to the community.
Yeah, so a couple $100,000 for the environmental, and some not very large amount for the taking care of the site is your estimate. My concern would be if our expenses are $1 million and we're getting 1.2, then we don't get very much. But
right.
if
no, it's not on that order. It's on the lower order. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm aware of the time. I do want, Council Perry, you can make a comment. I just wanted to say someone had put a comment and yeah, a comment in the chat. I should have disabled the chat. We don't use the chat because of open meeting law, but I will entertain Tom, if you'd like to, we can have brief follow-up comment by, by a member of the public if you'd like to. I'm going to go to Councilor Perry, and then Tom, if you'd like to verbalize that briefly, that would be okay. Councilor Perry.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this discussion. My thought really goes to how this request for proposal will be disseminated. I know that there's a set process that'll be available online on our website, but for a parcel this important, I was wondering if we thought about widening our net, or are we trying to think creative about really going to extra extents to just reach out to folks and see who would want this property. So I guess my question is, are we thinking of doing anything else other than kind of posting it up, or what's our plan here?
It sounds like you have some great ideas about where we should send this, so I'm going to contact you as soon as we issue the bid. No, I mean, absolutely, you're right. I think it's a very important piece of property, and we'll do, of course, the legally required postings. But I think it is really important to send out to any through as many networks as we can, and leaving the bid open for 3 months minimally not only allows a little bit of time to sort of make sure we're hitting all those possible networks, but gives time, obviously, to do some due diligence and for people to do some research and understand what the property is. But I absolutely agree with you. I think that this project should not just be minimally posted.
Okay, I'm going to go to Tom. Hi, Tom.
Thank you for letting me follow up.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with the bidding process, but I think that Sam made some really interesting comments about evaluating the benefit of a minimum bid. Seems like you're trying to get as much money as you can without really knowing what the expectation of a design and construction cost is going to be to a potential bidder, to know where their input of money versus buying the property. I don't want to see it given away. I don't want to see us lose money, but I think maybe we don't know enough about, this aspect of costs to really set that minimum bid criteria correctly. If there are protections already built into the RFP process that we can reject any bid, as Stan Moulton was also presuming, what's the harm? What's the harm in not having a minimum bid and allowing, as Sam said, a lot more people to bid on it? It just seems like further discussion might be valuable with people that could give us more input. Again, Carolyn, I'm not, complaining about your experience or your judgments. I'm just saying, let's tap into people in the industry and find out, what's reasonable. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Councilor Elkins?
Yeah, I want to push back on that a little bit, Tom. I appreciate your comments, but I mean, the way we find out what the market will bear is by putting it on the market. And I think that I profoundly disagree with the idea of not going forward. I don't even with a minimum bid. That's like asking people to put their houses on the market without an asking price. If we don't get the bids, then we don't, and we retool. And that's our signal that we've overshot. I'm not hearing anything that makes me think that we have, though. And it's also not like the housing market, like putting your house on the residential street on the market. It is it's a unique property. It takes some give and take between people who are interested, and we will hear from them if the numbers don't work and we don't get bids. The other thing that I also want to say is that the other problem I see with doing no minimum bid is that it's a tremendous use of city resources to go through bids and to vet them. And that's true whether it is a nonsense bid that isn't realistic in any sense of the word, or if it is something that is in fact reasonable. So the other part of it is we can't take all comers. That's not fiscally responsible. It's also not a good use of the Carolyn's time and that department's and all the people who'd have to be involved to vet this if we come up with an avalanche of RFPs that really just aren't reasonable or appropriate for the project.
Sam, do you have a brief question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think, I just wanted to clarify, my suggestion before was not that you shouldn't have a minimum bid. I think I was saying that more often than not, we see other communities have a nominal minimum bid, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And I certainly understand the concerns about wanting to cover the city's costs and staff time to review the proposals. I think my concern is really with the value that's been placed on this property. And I'm seeing deals in Eastern Massachusetts where property values are far higher than they are here, and we're not paying anywhere near that. At least for housing. I can't really speak to other commercial interests, but I question why the assessor valued the land at $650,000 and all of a sudden it's $2.5 million. It really seems like they're treating an obsolete building as an asset when really it's a liability. So I guess I would just suggest that the city take a closer look at the valuation of this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Councilor Elkin, sorry.
Sorry, I haven't found my little hand button. And Sam, I appreciate your experience and what you've shared. I do have to ask, is your company going to be interested in bidding on this? I mean, it's worth understanding if you're advocating for a minimum bid, for us to lower our minimum bid, if in fact you have an interest beyond your interest as a resident. I'd be very interested to understand that.
Can I respond?
Sure. I'm hoping you will.
What I would say is that at least from a housing perspective, we value property based on the number of units we can build on a site and the per unit cost, because that's how we make our money. So we would have to evaluate, the terms of the RFP and all the constraints put on it and how many units we feel like we could fit on there. So I mean, based on what I'm seeing now, I think it's doubtful we would be interested in it at this price.
Well, I'm not asking for you to commit. I'm wondering if you have an interest, in the outcome of this debate, that literally goes to, your project. I just think it's important for us to understand. It's not, So, I mean, so that's
Yeah,
what I mean. I don't mean as a
do
general
I-
matter, I'm on the previous spot. I don't, or just,
I mean, do I have an interest? I'm interested in, I would love to do a project here, but I don't know that it's going to be possible for us to spend the time developing a proposal because there just may not be an upside.
right.
Well,
Well, let me ask you this.
From a personal perspective, I would love to, I want to see the best project here that is possible, as a resident.
Sure, I understand. I
So
just
I-
wanted to make sure I was clear on, and I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what the full extent of the conversation. So, thank you.
All right.
Mhm.
Aware of the time. Oh, I see Council Jarrett.
Thank you. If we're done with the minimum bid question, I did want to bring us back to the mixed income housing criteria that was brought up earlier, and to have any discussion around whether there should be any points given if the split is market rate of market rate housing is greater than 60%.
Right. Right. If we want to start, I guess if we wanted to start looking at, any edits to the languaging, that was one of them. Did you have a suggestion for the languaging?
Well, I would ask
Yes,
Carolyn, we
Yeah,
had
that's,
discussed at least the, flexibility of you said 60 to 70%, for example, or 60 to 80%. It seems that the more market rate housing there is, there's generally more points, although there is a need for a minimum. So where does that fall in your mind? Where is that threshold where, well, if we're going to have mixed income housing, because that is the name of the criterion, what would be the minimum affordable or attainable, and thus the maximum market rate?
To get those extra points. I mean, at some point you're splitting hairs. I think that the idea, I think attainable housing is probably needed more than affordable housing, or what we're referring to as attainable housing, given the location, given the number of units we have already as affordable housing. So, it could be, the other piece of it is, let's say someone comes in with 100%, they do a mix and the housing piece is all 800 square feet or smaller. I think that, again, I don't know that when you're getting down to this granular, whether it matters that much, and whether it matters that much to a proponent, to a respondent, whether they get that extra 10 market rate units or not. So I think obviously if they fall, if they do, or if they're doing 70%, they're also doing 60%. That's the other way to look at it. So we're just not giving them any extra points for doing more than 60%. But, if you want to clarify and say 60 to 70 versus, 30 to 40, that's fine. I think that I don't know in the end that it'll, win one developer over another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like I wasn't interpreting it correctly then, because I was sort of interpreting it as it must be a 60-40 split in order to get 5 points. And what you're saying is that's not the case. It can be 60 or greater.
So you know, I think there may be some flexibility, but we're not saying if you do 100%, you get those points, because the criteria, as you said, is mixed income. So
Right.
it has to be less than, 100. So I guess from that perspective, maybe it's not as easy to make that analysis, make that interpretation. But I guess I'd like to understand more about what you're thinking in terms of what you think is important. Do we have 70% market rate, and it's okay to get points if you're doing just 30%? So I guess that's what your question is. How low do we want to go? And, I'm suggesting 40%. Is the would be sort of that cutoff. But again, it's I guess this is where you guys can discuss whether that makes sense to go
Right.
lower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would almost say that you get 5 points for this optimal split, but say you had 80-20, you could still get 3 points. Because wouldn't we value having 20% be attainable or affordable? I guess that's my point, and requesting some additional clarity in the language about what we're looking for there, also to make sure it's clear that you don't have to hit exactly 60-40. You're somewhere in that range and you still get the points.
Councilor Moulton.
I think that's a very important point that Councilor Jarrett just raised, and that is clarity to eliminate the ambiguity that that we, in my opinion, we don't want 100% market rate. So I think there does need to be a ceiling on the points that we're giving for the proportion of market rate. But I also agree that we're not saying that you have to hit just 60%. If it's 60 to 66% or somewhere in that area, you get the points. But you go above a certain percentage of market rate, then you're not getting those points. And again, this is the scoring rubric. It's not going to eliminate the project if it comes in at a higher percentage market rate. It's just you're just not going to get the beneficial points. But I think that the key point there that Councilor Jarrett just articulated is let's eliminate the ambiguity, so it's clear to all the possible bidders what the point system is based on.
So 60 to 70%, a project that includes 60 to 70% to 30 to 40% split of market rate housing or other commercial uses to affordable housing or attainable housing.
Well, that seems reasonable to me. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Do we want to? Is that something that the director could work on? Are you looking for a motion to?
Well, it seems like, I mean, yeah, you're a committee, so you
Yeah,
probably want to make a vote, and then I
To
can certainly
amend
make those changes for the council meeting tomorrow.
so we can entertain a motion. Yes, Councilor Nash.
Well, we have two committees open here. So,
Right.
that I think it's
Right.
awkward, one committee making a motion while the, and voting on something while others
Right.
in the room. So,
The could we, when we vote on our recommendation, can we put that as part of? Yeah.
Well, actually, it's making me
Yeah.
wonder how we get to deliberating here. Because we have two
Yeah.
committees open and that yeah, I think one of us needs to leave the room while the other one deliberates. And what we may need to do is figure, it's actually a complication. Are we going to have community resources come back and then work on their recommendation?
We didn't do that last time.
What was the ideas on how to resolve this?
Yeah.
I
we
don't
didn't
think
do
you
that
need to
last-
leave the room.
Yeah, I feel like we've deliberated jointly and then just taken our own votes.
That's
for
what we
each
did
committee.
with the other items.
But if we need to
I-
leave the room, I could eat dinner. So
Well, we can certainly take a break. I definitely want to just keep mindful of the time because we have finance does have other business as well. So, I mean, yeah, so we could make, we could make our recommendation kind of contingent on that change without offering an amendment. Or we could, yeah, I'm open to suggestions to what would feel good to the counselors. Yes, Counselor Alkin.
I'm going to try a thing, which is that I would move for community resources a positive recommendation subject to the edit that Counselors Jarrett and Counselor Moulton suggested.
I will second that. And I don't know if we want to clarify that to me, it sounded like the edit is to better define the ranges of market rate to affordable / attainable for each of the point levels. Does that sound right?
I think that's fine. And that the precise language to come before council when it comes before full council, but I'm move a positive recommendation with that.
Okay, and I've seconded it. And does that sound right, Carolyn? Something you can work with?
Yes, we'll turn it around for tomorrow night.
Okay.
All right, well then that triggers, let us take a vote on that. Motion made by Counselor Elkins and seconded by Counselor Jarrett. Oh no. Oh no, Laura.
It's our first test of Laura, and we still can't hear you, Laura. You can read her lips.
I know.
Laura, I did the other roll calls and I emailed them to you already. I'm happy to do this one if you'd like.
Mayor, you're the best.
Thanks, Mayor.
Perfect. Okay, so we were starting with community resources, is that right?
Yes.
Hold on, let me pull up the agenda so I have your names in the order. Where did it go? Where did it go? Hold on. I thought my job was done. Hold on. Okay, we are, so first up is Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yeah.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
and Counselor Elkins.
Yes.
Okay. And then moving on to finance.
Finance.
Okay.
Do we have to,
I don't know that it's been moved and seconded in that committee.
right, we need to do that first.
Laura, are you,
Yes.
Laura, did you mark down who did the motion and the second for, you got all that? Okay, I'll just be your mouthpiece. Okay.
So I move that we also issue a positive recommendation based on the suggested clarification that Councilor Jarrett and I spoke to regarding the mix of market rate and affordable / attainable housing.
I'd second that.
Okay, roll call, please, Mayor of Finance.
First up is Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Passes
Okay,
unanimously.
so both committees have passed a positive recommendation. I really should have kept you guessing by voting differently in the second committee, but anyway. Okay.
On that
so-
note,
Yes.
I was
Would
gonna
you like a
move to
break?
adjourn community resources.
Oh, okay, right. That's
Second.
right. Is that all? Yeah, that's right.
Mayor Mouthpiece, that's weird. Mayor, will you do a roll call?
Okay, Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you
a
all.
great
Hi,
conversation.
community resource.
Thank you. I look forward to
Ca-
hearing the fruits of the rest of Finance Committee's work.
Councilor Mayor,
Dinner
could
for
we,
us, Counselor Elkins.
could we take just a short break before we
Absolutely.
continue? Thank
yeah.
you.
Yes.
What are we
Let's be
taking?
back here
5 minutes
at
or
7:50.
what?
Sound good?
5 or what?
Enough time? Take a break for 9 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Finance. And
Yep.
then come back.
Okay,
So 7:50.
thank you.
Laura, are you there, Laura? Maybe not.
I don't see her, Gio.
Gonna try and troubleshoot with her a little bit.
Thank you for your help.
Sure. Hi, Laura. So you maybe have tried this? On the microphone, where the microphone is, there's like a little caret, like a little up arrow down at the bottom.
We've adjourned the Community Resource Committee, and we're moving on to Finance Committee business. First up in the Finance Committee is the approval of the November 30th, 2022, January 25th, 2023 Finance Committee minutes. Wait, yeah, but right, okay. So there's two minutes that are, two of those dates are just Finance Committee, and we've already approved the February 8th, 2023. Okay,
Move
great.
to approve
So
them.
now, so excuse me, I misspoke. I'm looking, we're looking to approve the 11/30/2022 Finance Committee minutes and the January 25th, 2023.
Move to approve them.
Second.
Excellent. We have Laura back. Looks like it, yeah. So we're gonna get a roll call on approval of those minutes, Laura.
Okay, Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Those minutes are approved, and our the last item on our agenda before new business would be the fourth quarter financial report. So we have a very patient finance director, Charlene Nardi, here to present the fourth quarter financial report of Northampton to us. Welcome, Director Nardi.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Excellent. Are you a co-host?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. That would be great. There we go.
Okay. So can you see the document, and is it large enough, or do you need a little larger? Is that good?
Yeah, the one before, yeah, any of those work for me.
Okay.
I can't see the other counselor, so.
Yeah, you guys put you on a different screen now, so I can't see you either.
No, everyone seems okay. Go ahead, Director.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at the general fund revenues for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023. As we talk about every quarter we identify we're at 100% of the year. So we look at that final percent column on the right-hand side, and you can see this column. We're looking for 100% or more as we're talking about revenues against our budget. So for property, personal property tax revenue and real estate tax revenue, they are 98.2 and 98.9%. That's about, that is where we're in the range normally every year. We never get exactly 100%. So those look good. The treasurer collector noted that there are a few more unpaid taxes in FY 2023. So while we don't have a lot of analysis on that at this point, we're going to continue to watch that as we go through FY 2024. And as you know, the treasurer has a very structured process about working with residents, taxpayers on getting the taxes up to date and paid. The next item, the motor vehicle, we budgeted 2 million, the budget was 2,403,000. We collected 2,991,000. So we have 124% of our budget. This is $8,973 above what we collected last year. And based on how this has been trending, I did raise this in FY 2024 to $2.8 million, which is the 3-year average of 20, 21, and 22. And this tends to be a little bit lower because we don't really see the full picture of motor vehicle excise until the third and fourth quarter of every year. So we're budgeting during that time, but still I have been cautious. So next year we've raised that to the 3-year average. Hotel motel revenue. So that's the next line right here, still page 1. We budgeted $674,500. We brought in $970,000. $975, which exceeded the budget estimates by 44%. This is significantly improved over FY 2021, the worst COVID year, and it appears to have fully rebounded. It is higher than any of the prior years. And seeing this trend over FY 2023, we've again budgeted this line at a higher amount. We went to 750 in FY 2024, which is greater than the 3rd and 5-year averages. So we're pushing that a little bit with the expectation that it'll stay that high. Meals revenue, the one right below that, we brought in $779,699, exceeding our budget projection of $554,500, and that is also above the revenue collected in FY 2022 by $87,000. But it is only above FY 2019, the last full year before COVID, by $13,000. So while the revenue source has certainly rebounded to a great degree, it isn't significantly higher than before COVID. So I didn't push this, or we didn't push this revenue as high in FY 2024 as we continue to watch that. The cannabis revenue, which is the adult marijuana excise right here, we budgeted 975, and remember, we've been dropping this every year. We did not make our budget projections. We're at $846,153, which is 91% of our budget projections, leaving us $128,000 short. This is a drop in revenue from FY 2022 of $304,000, or a drop of 27% from last year. And as it is still unclear whether we have reached the bottom of this, our decline in market share, we've reduced this revenue source to $800,000 for FY 2024, and I'm even a little nervous that we will reach that. So the next section, or the bottom section of here, we talk about our pilots. So these amounts are estimated during the budget season. That is in the spring of 2022. And then we invoice them based on the tax rate after it was set in the fall of 2022, which that accounts for when you look at what we budgeted. So for instance, Smith College, we budgeted 100 revised estimate, $108,000. We brought in $136,000. So that accounts for the difference. It's an estimate up front, and then when we have the tax rate, we can actually know the exact amount. All of those came in higher, with the exception of one, higher than expected. Oh, excuse me, 2, but I think these two, there's 2 of these together. Yes. The ambulance services. Did I skip something here? Sorry about that. Let's go down to the next page, which are parking revenues, which actually starts at the bottom of the page 1. All of these parking revenues, which make up 6 lines, were budgeted at, I think it's 6. Yep, 4. Yep, 6. We budgeted for $1.2 million. If you notice on the side, you're going to see 100%, and you're going to see all zeros. And the reason for that is because parking revenues must be exactly what we budgeted for. So if we are short, we take money from the parking reserved receipts. And if we are above, we take whatever is in excess of what I budgeted, and we put it back into parking reserves receipts. So in this case, we met all our budget projections. So all 6 lines came in above budget expectations for a total of $365,000, or 31% above the $1.2 million projection. The mobile app revenue came in $168,758 over budget, and makes up about 47% of that excess revenue. The total parking revenue, the 6 lines, is only slightly higher than the 1.5 million from FY 2022. So it's not significantly higher than FY 2022, but higher than FY 2021, which was only 1 million, and certainly still lower than FY 19 and FY 20 at 1.8 million back then. But as we talked about, people are using and coming into the city differently. And I think also Park Mobile, is cutting down on tickets and those types of revenues. If we go to the second page, which at the top, we just talked about all of the parking, we move on to ambulance services. We budgeted $2 million. We brought in $3.3 million, 166% of our projections. It continues to be a significant revenue source. In FY 2024, we budgeted this at $2.8 million. We really pushed that budget revenue with the expectation that it will remain high. The next section, which is charges for services. These are the fees and departmental revenues. It also consists of the tuition that Smith Voc brings in. So overall, we met our projections at 100.6. And as you can see, you can skim down, municipal liens was lower. But for the most part, everything is above the 100% mark. So we met our goals there. I feel like I'm missing a section. Permits. Liquor licenses and permits for each of the departments. Again, we met our budget projections at 142%. So overall, it's good. And like I said, everything here is above projections except periodic inspections, which again, we're not talking a lot of money here, $30,000, but that amount before the year end closes, we will get that revenue. We've identified where it's missing, and we will have that revenue to put in there. Federal reserves is the next. We talk about Medicaid, the reimbursement for schools. We budgeted this, and we budgeted this at 159,000. We don't push this revenue source because we don't know from year to year what it'll be. You can see we came in at $200,000, but some years have been less. So that is when we just generally budget at a stable rate. State revenue. These are the state aid revenues. Mostly they're all in the cherry sheet. They're voted as part of the Massachusetts state budget. They come in as they come in. Some are monthly, some are quarterly. And as you can see, the first budget line, which we called abatements for veterans, those that are blind and surviving spouses, also known as VBS. You can see that it's negative $61,000. That was an error when I printed these reports. We actually brought in $140,000. We budgeted $110,000. We're bringing in $140,000. The $91,000 was coded negative. It will be reversed as soon as the new year starts, and that's just a way that Munis works. It will be coded as a positive, and for total revenue, we'll see $140,000 here. So we will exceed that budget projection. If you look at the other ones, they come in right at 100%, which is normally what we expect. Charter school aid. This revenue is below budget. I did reach out to the Department of Revenue, and the reason this is lower by it's only at 65.9%, is because charter school reimbursements are based on preliminary information from the charter schools with their projected enrollment. And generally, the final amount that appears on the cherry sheet will reflect updates as of April 4th, or excuse me, April, the fourth month of the year. However, the estimate and the actuals still may not be the same. And this is true in this particular case. During the course of the year, the reimbursement and assessments are updated. And the final chapter reimbursement by the state was lowered to $343,518. $343,518. And when you look at this, we actually expected 642 by the final government, by the governor's budget. The difference here is that $218,833. The good news is when it gets lowered on the revenue side, it also gets lowered on the assessment side. So there's no real impact on the budget. So we're getting less revenue, but we're also paying out less to charter outgoing tuition. So there is good news there as well. And then if we move on, the big one here is parking tickets. We collected $588,470. 63,000 greater than expected and 69,000 more than last year. You know, as we discussed in the past, and you know, I tried to allude to it before, we expect this line to kind of remain down because Park Mobile just gives consumers more options when they come down to patrons of Northampton come to the city. They have more options for making sure that their parking is updated. And then we have the CMVI, are the automobile law violation tickets. Those came in above projections. And then, you know, in these you can see interest on investments was particularly higher. That's a reflection of interest rates are going up, so significantly higher. And we have been very conservative over the last 3 years. And so as I noted, as I went through this particular document, we are really looking at maybe pushing those revenues a bit more as we see them rebound, or if we see changes in the market, you know, like with interest rates, to see if we can get a little more out of those revenues and push them a little more. So the next sheet is the fourth quarter enterprise revenue. The first three, as you can see, we're again looking at making 100%. All of them overall have met just about the 100%, which is normal for the enterprise funds. They are not significantly over. That's about the right range. The only one that has dropped is the stormwater. I mentioned this at your council meeting in August. We are still looking at that. I think I may have mentioned that the Department of, or the DPW has done a lot of work on looking at those bills on the pervious and impervious landscape for a lot of landowners. So those rates have changed a little bit. So we did not make our goal here, and we're not sure if that's entirely what we're seeing here. This tends to be pretty close to 100%, but we're 105 off. So we're going to look at that some more and keep watch on that as we move forward through FY 2024. Our next section is the expenditures. The expenditures for the general fund. And again, now we're looking at this last column a little bit differently since we're talking about expenses. We do not, do you want me to blow this one up a little bit? We now want to see 100% or less in this right-hand column. So as you scroll down, you're going to see in your packet that for the most part, or everyone is 100% or below. And that's one of the things I start looking at, and all the department heads, the directors look at too, as we enter the final quarter, is making sure that their PS accounts, which again, I'll remind you is their salaries, and the OM, which is their ordinary maintenance or their expense accounts or expense lines. As we go through, we want to make sure that they are not exceeding 100%. And if they are, what those reasons are, and you know, how we can bring them back in line, or why we need additional funds to get through the rest of the year. So, and as if you scroll down, you can see that there is an excess in this, there was turnbacks, and those are in part due to the vacancies that we see. You know, there was retirements, there was turnover, new hires, long-term people leaving, and folks coming that salaries aren't quite as high. So there's turnbacks there too. So between, well, let me finish doing the expense, the enterprise fund. Fourth quarter enterprise funds. Again, percent used on this side, and you're going to see much lower percent used in the enterprise funds, and that's true every year. And the reason for that, if you look at the encumbrances, is because enterprise projects continue over, they cross the boundaries of fiscal years. So a lot of times we hold on to those funds and we move them because the project started in one year and continues into the next. And so we can hold on to that encumbrance and pull it in and pay for that project, or pay for the work that was done in the prior year with bills that come in the next fiscal year. And so that's really what you'll see if you scan the enterprise funds. You know, overall, the grand total is, and I guess that's just for solid waste. So each one has its grand total, and it's once with the encumbrance, you'll see them close to 100%. So overall, the city, when you look at the revenue report, you'll see that we had a excess reserve, our excess revenue from our budget projections, which I'm going to stop sharing if I can find the budget. Where is that? To stop sharing?
Actually, Director, before you do that, I just had a question about the veterans benefits, but maybe you don't need it to be up for you.
Yep. Is that their budget or the money coming in?
Money coming in.
Okay, so go to the revenues and we're
Revenue, yeah. Under charter.
Okay, veterans regional assessment? Is that
no, below charter school aid. Veteran benefits.
Yep.
I was just curious about that. Why it's is it...
So yes, we are actually seeing a reduction in veterans benefits. So we're receiving less money in because we're paying less money out. And in part, that is in part because we don't have a lot of, you know, we're losing our World War II and our Vietnam veterans. And in a lot of ways, and I certainly am not an expert in this, and Steve can speak better to it than I, but also I think veterans, the younger veterans services are different than the veterans from the World War II and Vietnam wars. So I think the money flow is going to be different, and the services that we provide are different as well. But I would defer to Steve on that. But basically that also means we're paying out less money as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'm trying to, there's usually a thing at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't let's see.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Maybe I can,
usually right here.
Do it.
Oh, you know what? Let me try this. Wait a minute. Let me bring you back over here. I think it's under this. That's why. All right. All up. Okay. Boy. Now I can't see any of you.
Oh, that's so interesting, really.
Where's the little do not share? Somebody can take control. And
yeah, let me, okay, hold on.
I can't find it. That's interesting.
I know. That is interesting. Did we? Right. I'm just looking. Okay, here, I'm going to do this.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't find my bottom bar.
Yeah, sometimes things move around in Zoom, I've noticed. I don't know.
Yep. So overall, the budget we ended very well in the budget year. You know, we are still projecting free cash will look good because of we exceeded our budget projections, and like I said, there were turnbacks, so we will see a free cash generation as well. And you'll hear more about that when that gets certain. So as you know, as of June 30th, free cash is no longer available. And then it is recertified by DOR when we close the books, which actually the auditors are doing the final closing of the books this next following week. And then all of that information will get sent to DOR. They'll certify our free cash and we'll be notified in late November what our free cash balance is. And then as usual, the mayor will bring forward orders for how we handle that.
Excellent. Yeah, I always think it's interesting how what we follow, like the actual, calendar and then the physical calendar.
I know.
It definitely stretches my mind. Yes, Councilor Nash.
Thank you. Director Nardi, I always, 7 years on council, I always loved the quarterly reports. They at first they seem dry, but over time it's like, oh, that's a good number. That's a good number. That's a problem there. And, in watching these numbers change as we went through the pandemic, and that, but what I'm seeing is that, as you went through, so meals are kind of where they were in 2019. Hotel fully recovered from the pandemic. Building permits are up. Parking tickets are up. Parking in general is down, and that people are coming to downtown in a different way, and that I think that's actually an important piece for that I hope we can get more information about in the coming weeks. So as we're discussing downtown and people's concern about parking is actually right now I can go downtown just about any time and I can find parking on Main Street. Friday night at 5 o'clock, that doesn't happen. 9:30 in the morning, there's parking on Main Street. People are doing something different, but at the same time, meals, hotels, all suggest that people are still actively getting downtown and that the economy is still strong despite there's been a shift in behavior. And figuring that out, in the coming weeks and months, I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, so I will say that the chief of staff has asked for information, and we are in the process of analyzing that parking data, all of that and how that has changed and the impact. And you are not the first person who I've said the changes that the council voted made a difference. And you're right. I mean, before that, people were coming and parking differently, using the downtown differently at different times. So all that plays into it. And yes, all of that data will be important as we move forward and we look at our revenue streams and what has come back and what hasn't. And I didn't share, and I'm willing to, if you still would like to look at it, that document that you helped me put together, Councilor Nash, that, kind of looks at the many years of, or 3 years, I think, of hotel, motel, meals, the cannabis. And if you want me to share that, I can just briefly go through that if you'd like me to.
I think you went over that briefly at the last council meeting. It actually, I love that it made the newspaper. I was like, that's good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, they're really, it doesn't give us a picture of the entire economy, but it gives us taking temperatures in different sectors, and it shows that we're doing pretty well. Yeah. And it also tells us that the cannabis, boom is waning, and we've made the money that we could, and we'll make some money still. But anyway, I appreciate all of this. Thank you for all of the work that you put into this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, councilors. Yeah.
Yes. Chardine, we have the Taste of Northampton coming, and I think a year ago it was estimated about 10,000 people. So we're gonna check this out to see exactly how much more people will come this time, which I think more than 10,000. And more money, I think, will be going to the business people with food and so forth like that. So I think there is an advantage here for our business owners in Northampton with the Taste of Northampton. And as far as the marijuana situation, it's just not Northampton that's decreasing, so are other cities. It's happening. East
Right.
Hampton also.
Yep.
Councilor Moulton.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Nardi, for these very illuminating reports. And the two most important numbers that I see are the revenue, very end of the revenue, general fund revenue is 104%, slightly above what was projected, and the general fund expenses 97%, slightly below what was projected. That tells me that you are a very astute and prudent budget manager, fiscal director, and I think that should be highlighted. And speaking to the revenues that you and Councilor Nash have put together for on that sheet for the last several years, which was a brilliant idea. A lot of attention has been paid to the declining cannabis revenue. Not surprising, again, it is happening everywhere, as Councilor Labarge said. 200 adult recreational marijuana shops now open across the state. I think you're absolutely right that we probably haven't reached the bottom. But and you mentioned this, but I want to highlight this particularly. What is extraordinarily successful, I think, is the rebound in that hotel revenue. I mean, we saw a good rebound between FY 21 and 22, but it continued between FY 22 and 23, as you pointed out, up an additional 40%. So we're well above the pre-pandemic year, and that provides a great snapshot into the economy, because when people stay in hotels, they're spending in other ways, in shopping, dining, and otherwise patronizing local businesses. So that's really something that I find very encouraging.
Yes, thank you. I think those are very good points, and I want to thank you for your very kind words. But I will say the finance in the city is led by the mayor, and it's a team effort. But I appreciate your kind words, and I do appreciate you highlighting those things, because I do think those are the major takeaways.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for your time here. Any other comments from councilors before we let the director go? Thank you very much, Director.
Yes, my pleasure. Everybody,
Yeah.
have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Charlene, very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, committee, I think we have unless there's any new business, I think we're done with the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
All right, we are so adjourned. Yep, and thanks to Northampton Open Media as usual. And good night, Mayor.
Good night, everybody.